Okay, Woodward friends, before we can make our clay animals, we have to turn our blob of clay into a ball. So first, I'm going to take the squishy part of my hand and I'm going to hit it a couple of times to round out the corners. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I can flip it and I can hit them over here, and it's going to start turning into a ball. Once you've got the corners smushed in, you can remember how to drive that train. We're going to put our hands side by side. We're going to move one up and forward, and we're going to now we're going to do that with our clay in our hands. It's going to be kind of hard, but you're going to try your best, and we're going to drive that train until it becomes a ball. And sometimes it gets a little lopsided, and that's okay. It won't have to be perfect. When I think my ball is okay, I'm going to set it down and I'm going to leave it right where it is. Okay, Woodward friends, before we can make our clay animals, we have to turn our blob of clay into a ball. So first, I'm going to take the squishy part of my hand and I'm going to hit it a couple of times to round out the corners. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I can flip it and I can hit them over here, and it's going to start turning into a ball. Once you've got the corners smushed in, you can remember how to drive that train. We're going to put our hands side by side. We're going to move one up and forward, and we're going to now we're going to do that with our clay in our hands. It's going to be kind of hard, but you're going to try your best, and we're going to drive that train until it becomes a ball. And sometimes it gets a little lopsided, and that's okay. It won't have to be perfect. When I think my ball is okay, I'm going to set it down and I'm going to leave it right where it is. Next, I have to take my hand and try to squish the clay. So I'm going to use just this part of my hand. I'm not going to use my fingers because I don't want to put holes in the clay. I'm just going to use the flat part, and I'm going to put it on my ball and I'm going to push, and then I'm going to take my hand away. I want to flip the clay over and squish. And I know that my hands are bigger than yours, and that's okay, because sometimes we're going to squish a couple times. Squish one here, squish one here. You might have to do a couple, but we're going to try to keep it even, only using the flat part of our hand. Our paper towel is going to get a little wet, but that's okay. We still want to leave it on the paper towel so we keep our table clean and the clay doesn't stick. I'm going to keep squishing until my clay is about as thick as a cookie. So right now, it looks like a pretty good cookie size. You don't want it to get too skinny or your animal is going to break apart. So after it's a cookie, you're going to take a cookie cutter. And this one's just a circle. And you're going to push it down, lift it up, and you might have to pull the extra clay off. We're not going to play with it. We're just going to set it on the corner of our towel and leave it alone. I'm going to take my thumb and very lightly get my circle out of the cookie cutter. Then I can share my cookie cutter with my neighbors. I only have 5, so 2 tables are going to have to share one of the cookie cutters. Once you have your cookie cut out, don't play with it until you see the next steps. So first graders, for our birds, we actually only need half of this circle. So I'm going to be giving you a knife. Oh, Miss Adams, that's not a knife, that's a popsicle stick. And I'm going to take that popsicle stick and slice my circle in half. One half is going to become my bird, and the other half is going to be extra scrap for my other parts. So for my bird body, I want the round part to go down and the flat part to be on the top. So for my extra parts, I need an eye, a beak, and a wing. So I'm going to take my knife again to make my wing, and I'm going to use my scrap piece, and I'm going to decide that a wing is kind of shaped like a triangle. So if I cut this like this, that's a triangle, but it's kind of a big triangle, so I might make it a little smaller, and I can just go slice, and that is going to become my wing. I can squish out the lumpy edges, and I'm going to decide this is where my wing is going to fit, but I'm not going to squish it down yet. I also need an eye and a beak, so I'm going to take a little pinch of clay. I'm going to roll it in a ball again. Remember, we drive that train to make a ball. And then between my fingers, I can pinch the ball down, and that just kind of becomes a good eye shape. Last, I need to get a beak, so I'm going to take a small pinch of clay from my extra piece, and first I'm going to make a ball by driving the train, but then instead of driving the train, I'm just going to rock my hands back and forth without moving them up and down, and I'm going to end up with kind of a snake shape. It might dry out a little, but that's okay. I'm going to bend it in half, and that's going to become a beak. Cheep, 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 cheep. So if it breaks, oops, it broke. Clay is magic where you can just stick it back together. Just be careful about touching it too much. Then my beak is going to go right there, so you can see that we've got our bird body, an eyeball, a beak, and a wing. But in order to attach them, because right now there's a bunch of smooth surfaces, and if you think about it like a Lego, if you attach the bottoms together, they're kind of smooth and they won't fit. But you need to attach the top, which has the bumpies, and the bottom, which has the holes, so that it can fit. So I have to create those grooves on my clay. So I'm going to take my pieces off. I'm going to get my knife back out, and where that wing was, I'm going to kind of scratch up the clay for some grooves. I'm going to flip my wing over, and I'm also going to put scratches there too. But they still won't stick because they're both dry. So I'm going to give you a bowl of water, and you're going to take one finger. One. You're not going to take your whole hand. You're not going to take a paintbrush. You're just going to take one finger, and you're going to touch the water. Then you're going to touch the bird body that has the scratches. Okay, and that's all you need. So then I can take my wing, scratches side down, and I can attach them like a Lego, and I can squish it just a little bit. You don't want to squish it super flat because you still want to see those cool textures. I can use that finger and I can smooth some of my edges out. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing for my eye and my beak. I'm going to scratch the surface where I want to put the eye. I'm going to scratch the back side of my flat circle. One finger, one touch of water, put the water on the bird, squish the eye down. And last thing, I do that for the beak as well. This one just needs little tiny scratches. We gotta be very careful with our beak, we might break it. We just want to scuff it up a little bit. They don't have to be pretty. One finger, one touch, touch the bird, and squish it down. Later, I'm going to be poking holes up here and down here because we're going to turn these into a wall hanging. We're going to put a wire right here to hang it with some beads, and I'm going to stick the pipe cleaner in there for some legs. So you won't do this, but myself or Mrs. Jameson will. And that's where the legs are going to go later. And this I'm just showing you what's going to happen. So that's what it's going to look like later, but we don't know whose they are either. So I'm going to have a grown-up come around and write your name with marker on your paper towel so that we know whose they are later. And last thing our bird needs is a cool texture. So there's going to be these little rubber stamps. There's going to be one at every table so you can share with your table mates. And you're going to pick either the bird body or the wing to add texture to. And what you can do is you can just take your finger and you can guide it to where you want it. Press very lightly. And now you have texture on your bird. This texture is going to be extra cool when we color it. Okay. And we need to have a spot for its pupil, so I'm going to take the back side of a pencil. You can just take it out of your caddy, and I'm going to just poke just a little bit. I don't want to poke a hole through it, I just want to poke a shape into it. So now our birds are done, and we can work on cleaning up our space. So your extra clay is going to go to a bag on the counter so I can recycle it. Your water bowl is going to get dumped down the sink and set in the dryer. I want all of the stamps to be carefully stacked and set on the back counter along with your popsicle sticks. Okay. And then when we're all done, a teacher is going to take your bird away, and a grown-up will be spraying your table. After the table is sprayed with water, one person at your table that the teacher decides is going to get a rag from next to the girls' side of the sink by the pink basket. They're going to wash the table off. And then somebody else at your table that the teacher decides is going to get a paper towel from the sink and dry up the rest of the water. The paper towel can go in the garbage, the rag can go back next to the sink where it came from, and if we're ready to go, we can either, if it's the end of the day, you can line up, and if there's extra time, you can do some free drawing with drawing paper and a pencil. After they're all dry, I'm going to take them to John Muir, to the kiln room. And a kiln is a very giant machine that we use to bake the clay. And right now it's actually cooking some of our other kindergarten friends projects. And it's already at 550 degrees. That's about how hot your kitchen oven gets. But I have to cook these to almost 2,000 degrees. And when we're all done, the clay is going to change from that sticky mud, and it's going to change into white glass, and it's going to be hard. It's pretty cool.